Hello enthusiasts! This review will be for the PSVR2 title Synth. In this first impressions review, I will be providing half of my total score for the game based on what I've played so far. Sometime in the future, once I've played through the majority of the game up to and including completion, I may provide an additional final impressions review in the same manner. How these reviews will work. I've broken down my reviews into 4 categories: graphics, sound, controls, and gameplay. Each category begins with 10 points, and any detractors will remove a point. If no detractors are present in a category, the game will receive a 2-point bonus for that category. If all 4 categories receive a perfect score, an additional 2 perfect points will be added, totaling up to 50 points for each half of my reviews, and up to a possible total final score of 100 points. Make sense? Let's jump into the review. I first have to say thank you to Sahin-san, the marketing manager from Kluge Interactive, for providing me with a copy of the game. I was given the base game and the Gorillaz music pack for this review. The graphics in Synth have a high contrast between dark blacks and neon-colored lights. As soon as I jumped into the game, this is what stood out, and it looks fantastic in the PSVR2 headset. I love the Tron-inspired 80s art style, which also fits well with some of the 80s style music. There is some aliasing in the distance and noticeable texture draw, but not to the point of it being an issue while playing the game. I'm not sure what went into the decision to choose rotating orbs as the objects in your hands, but matching these objects to identical orbs that approach you on the track feels a little odd in my opinion. Luckily, for me at least, there are options to change the approaching notes into simple colored circle outlines, or you can choose different textures for the orbs. I personally found my preference leaning towards solid bright colored circles for the approaching notes, and changed the obstacles from their default purple to a solid black with red outline, which I think looks really cool. The graphics required some tweaking to suit my liking, but I am very satisfied with the final result I was able to obtain.
Kicking tunes, picture you getting down in a picture tube, like you lit the fuse. You think it's fictional, mystical, maybe spiritual hero who appears in you to clear your view when you're too crazy.
Music selection and quality of sound for the music in Synth is what should be expected in a rhythm action game such as this. A range of musical genres exist, from heavy techno tracks, 80s inspired, if not actually from the 80s, heavy metal, electro swing, and so on. It leans a little more towards certain genres than others, but not in a negative way. I would like to see song packs from artists like Caro Emerald to flesh out some of the electro swing tracks. The sound effects are where I have an issue. By default, when hitting a note, I was rewarded with a sound effect that is not unpleasant in itself. It's when hearing the exact same note effect with no variation whatsoever, over and over, that it began grating against my ears. After some time, I even felt it within my skull, almost like a click coming from the back of my head. Instead of a pleasant sound effect making me feel special for correctly hitting a note in rhythm, it was punishing. After going into the options, I saw that there were 3 options for this sound, but the labels for these don't feel accurate, since one that sounds like a laser is not labeled laser, so I'm not sure what's going on there. The laser option was a little more tolerable. Still, it didn't add to the experience and instead negatively affected it for me. I didn't want to have an absence of sound effects, which would result in me not knowing if I hit a note or not, so I opted for the one that was less of an annoyance. Another sound that felt quite generic was one that echoed after what I believed was a successful ride on specific rails. It reminded me of an old toy that had an echo chamber, and when you hit it, it would make this sound. Not as bad as the sound effect for the notes, but I still feel this didn't add anything to the experience and was actually a distraction from the song being played. Don't get me wrong, I believe the sound effect is necessary to indicate a successful action being performed, just not this one. I'm hoping Kluge Interactive will allow more sound effect options in the future. If any suggestions can be made in this area, I'd say to reference most first-party Nintendo games, or even the system navigation on the Switch as an ideal array of sounds. Variety and a single repeating sound effect could make a huge impact, rather than the same exact repeating sound with no variance.
Coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out.
It's there.
Kluge Interactive went all out on customization options in this game. I was immediately impressed when viewing the settings. Options range from choosing the colors of your orbs, obstacles, anti-aliasing settings, sound effect customization, far beyond anything I'd ever even think of tinkering with, and what I personally thought was extremely innovative, camera adjustments on the social screen and on broadcasts. I'm surprised no other PSVR2 or PSVR1 games allow the cameras on the social screen to be changed like this, other than when necessary in couch play. I could see this as a huge plus for social settings such as in a zombie shooter. Having the option for dramatic camera angles that don't just show what the player sees could add suspense and a social aspect for non-players, and could even make streams more interesting. It would be more like watching a movie. Other developers should take note of this feature and find ways to implement it into their own games. The controls in Synth Riders are pretty intuitive. The only buttons you press are in the menu system for the navigation. Once you're in the game, the controllers themselves are very responsive, which is what you'd want from a rhythm music game like this. There's no requirement to press any buttons on the controllers, as the gameplay entirely consists of moving your hands around. The core gameplay of Synth Riders is a little divisive for me. At its most basic element, you move your hands in place for the approaching orbs to touch the matching orbs of the same color that you're holding. Taking that idea further, there are rails that you also follow with your controller, almost like you're tracing a picture with your hand. There are also green orbs that you can use either hand to touch, but you must keep using that same hand for that green section. Gold or yellow sections require the use of both hands together. Simply moving your hands in the air to match up the colors to the corresponding notes theoretically shouldn't be fun in itself. And the level of fun, I believe, relies on your own personal level of activity or immersion in the game and in the music. If you jump in just to hold your hands up in anticipation of each following note, this game likely wouldn't be fun for anyone. But where the magic comes in is with the music combined with the actions you have to take in rhythm with it. Some songs may connect with individual players more than others, and this is where the level of enjoyment comes into play. Find a song you like or love, then get lost in the groove of the music and enjoy the ride. Through my experience with the game, I've had one problem with green notes that came up 2 or 3 times so far. When the green notes approached, I held up my intended hand in anticipation of hitting it, only to have it register to the opposite hand instead. This resulted in having to act quick to change hands and in turn missing some notes. I'm not certain if this is an issue with the programming of the game or a tracking limitation on the PSVR2 headset. It did happen frequently enough to impact my experience and was not a one-off situation. Regardless of this issue, I believe, unless another music rhythm game comes along to dethrone Synth Riders in the future, this is at the top of the genre, and I see myself easily choosing to play this first whenever I may be indecisive about which game to load up. Synth Riders is a must-have title. If you've watched my review up to this point, thank you so much. There are tons of YouTube videos you could be watching on this topic instead, but you've taken the time to support my smaller channel and I greatly appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this video, click the thumbs up, it takes less than a second, and if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing for additional content in the future. It only costs the price of your soul, and will help me out. Also, let me know what you think of this review. Was it fair, or is there anything that you disagree with? Start a conversation below, and please remember to stay respectful. That's all for now. I hope you have a wonderful day.